Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 194. Let's build a fantasy villain's lair.
The entire episode to be done in Count Chocula's voice.
Welcome to my... Sorry.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build.
Welcome back. As always, my name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And hiding underground, deviously yours, I am Michael Miller.
Yes, Michael.
You do the Count Chocula one for one of these episodes. You do the Count Chocula voice. I'll do that one. An evil underground lair.
I can't help but think about the beginning of, what was it, To Be or Not to Be from Mel Brooks, where it's like they're supposedly doing it in Polish, but it's like gibberish. And then about five lines in, like an announcer's like, for people's sanity, the rest of this movie will be shot in English, and the whole crew is like, oh, thank goodness.
So, if you listened to episode 193, wow, great adventure start, huh, guys?
Yes.
Fun
Awesome
stuff.
And you'll recognize this layer. This layer is actually what Gregor and
Marcus
Marcus are actually going to be. This is where the heist. This is the central place for the heist. So we need a convincing layer. And I figure it would be fun and make these like story adventures a little bit better if we actually make some of the elements, which is kind of odd because we're making them before we use them, but you're hearing the story before we actually build them.
So you guys just listened to 193, but Jeff and I haven't recorded that yet. So we're actually recording the build episode so that we can take advantage of the build. Then we're going to record the adventure, even though you've already heard the adventure. So basically, we're Time Lords, is what I'm trying to say.
So this goes back to what, episode 188?
Yeah, we actually recorded this episode before 188.
Well, it's funny because you called me, which is funny because that was the first episode we recorded.
Well, right. Well, I called.
Wow.
Well, that's because I called you 2 days from now. So
he's so good at this, but he actually will call me in the future about a new time travel device, which helps take care of continuity errors that are created when you go back in time. So he's had this all figured out since 2047,
something like that. So I finally got it down. Yeah. But I told you when I started reversing time, when I was living time in reverse, even though it was traveling forward for me, I figured out the key to not screwing up a timeline with a time travel device, with a time travel device that jumps in time, as opposed to a time travel device that just changes the directionality of time. If you're going to jump backwards in time, the key is you give to yourself the time travel device, and then that's it. Like you don't,
or else it doesn't work. But it's weird though. Future Mike is also younger than current Mike. He's like 20.
22. He just 22. Turned 22. Okay. Yeah. But that's not. But that's not for another 4 years though.
Okay, so welcome to building a fantasy layer.
we should have done that all in the time travel episode.
I know. Well, I'm sure that was all part of your plan when we did that episode. Yes, so,
yeah. All right, so
he is a master planner in this.
So, because we're building this, and the irony is that you, as the listener, know more about it than we do, because we've already done the adventure for you in episode 193, but we're conceiving of it now. This is going to be I don't want to use the word stronghold. I think compound is a better way to say it.
Stronghold-ish.
Stronghold-ish is,
I think it needs to be somewhat intimidating. I think it used to be like maybe where the older princes or maybe the kings were. but that's way too small for the current guys who have more money and more wealth. So
like if you go into like an old area, this, and I'm talking just like in the real world, when you go to like places that were colonized, you see the old forts. And of course they're small because when they first colonized, there was only, 12 guys. So they made a small fort. So this could be like one of those old forts that has now been repurposed to a merchant trade organization owns it now or rents it.
Well, a merchant, or at least he's leasing it from who owns it.
Okay. Well, my point is I'm thinking that as far as the story goes, a merchant is who is housed there right now. But I'm thinking a local merchant probably owns it now, and he can thus use it and rent it out and so on and so forth.
And to introduce the villain here, which you've already met, his name is Xanatos. And as you know from the last story, I hope we get to that. He actually, can use magic.
I was going to say don't. Okay. Too late.
that you will know
that'll be established
when you case the house. You should know that. So as long as we get to that, we'll be fine.
This is going to be weird. Just keep going.
Yeah. So there's a courtyard that there's going to have to be in there, and I found some pictures of some old homes, which I'm visualizing inside of a city. And the way I visualize the city is most of the buildings are 2 stories. Sometimes they're 3 stories. This isn't a vertical city. Probably mainly 2-story buildings. There are some buildings that go up to 4 stories. There's a new cathedral in town for a god called the Tribunal. He's part of this new church that nobles seem to really like, but the peasants really haven't caught on to it yet.
It's like the Church of Scientology.
It's kind of like the Church of Scientology meets the Catholic Church. So essentially, it's like the rich people are all part of it. But they're actually trying to get everyone part of it. But the peasant people sort of are always a little slow to come around to new religions. But there's been an impressive cathedral built because of that. That has this big 4-story church bell, which is important because this building, I believe, has a 3 or 4-story tower as part of a compound. So there's a stone outer wall. There's a house with at least stone at the wall level. Which is like 1 story of stone around the whole thing with battlements. And there's a house in one corner and a tower in another corner is the way I'm seeing it. A little L-shaped house. That's where the people stay. And the tower you can put stuff in. Traditionally in castles, you might store prisoners in towers. You might store a small garrison on like the top floor. But the top floor in this one has been modified. It actually has a balcony on the top floor. So I think it's going to be 4 stories at the same level you're at. We're going to probably have to give you some device so you can see in the room better than you could from the distance you are, because you wouldn't be able to make out the details that you will in the story. Or at least story-wise, you'll be given the license to see pretty much not fine details of what's in the room, but you'll definitely know where the jewels are. You will definitely need to know the traps that are in there, because it's like a lucky coincidence that 2 thieves happen to try and steal these right when you were casing the joint. You really owe them a favor on that, because your original plan would have probably been to go in much the same way they did, which was a cat burglary heist to break in and steal the gems. But you realize that this merchant is prepared. He is trying to protect these gems. He's obviously trying to make money off of these gems. And so they are displayed in this room. So it's meant for people to come look at them, but it's very tough to get into that tower, and it's even tougher to get into the case itself.
Would it be not a bad idea? Is Gregor going to be inside with me? Because if I can get to a tower and that's where the stuff is going to be, I would think it wouldn't be a bad idea to grab what I can and throw it out of the tower if I can throw it off the property.
So what your plan is, while you're going inside, you are going to actually help Gregor get into the tower. There is a predefined plan. So there has to be something in the room you can use. that you'll be able to lower down to the top of the wall, not to the floor, not to the ground courtyard, level. But you can get from the wall up to this room. And so you're going to want Gregor in there to help you get into this case, because this case is dangerous. As the people have learned, there is a spirit ward. So as you touch any part of the case, a spirit comes out and will try and murder the thief. So you don't touch the case if the spirit ward's there, and you know it's there, and you believe at least that this Xantos had the ability to put the spirit back in after the heist. That's what you got from that, was that, he actually put back into this case the spirit. So you think that trap is still in place. You know that there has to be a strong lock as well. Your typical lock picks, you'll need hardened actual steel picks, which are more expensive. Most of the picks that you use are just iron, and iron's a bit more fragile than steel. Steel picks won't break. So to actually break into this case, you're probably going to need steel lock picks, which those are definitely not impossible to get a hold of. They'll cost you a little bit of money. You could afford that out of your own, but you have this hardened display case, and you might be able to smash it, but you figure if this guy knows magic, it might be reinforced. So you want to go in with the ability to get through the lock, in case you can't just smash and grab, which would be ironic if you could. You have the magical defense, but you kind of have to plan for the worst in these scenarios. But we know that's the centerpiece, that room. And so now down in the tower, we need some stuff to make it more tower-like. We know that there are some guards in the tower itself. There are a small group of locals who've been hired to help defend just probably the jewels in that top floor. And you don't see them on the top floor, but you know they're in the tower. You don't know exactly how many at this point. You know there's at least one because you recognize obviously your friend in there, whose name is
Sinan.
Sinan, yep. And Sinan, is in there. That's obviously why you guys tried to get him to be your inside man. So now the trick is, how do you get into the tower? But that's more for the story side of things. So we know we have some guards in the tower, which means there's probably a place to hold prisoners in case people get captured in the tower. Those guys will probably not leave the tower again until the job is done. So if they capture someone in the tower, they would need a place to store the people until
authorities, city guard,
until they could be handed off, or probably actually taken by some of the other men at arms that this guy brought, taken out to the river, throat slit, and dumped into the water.
Well, would they have legal sanction to do that to a thief? A thief wouldn't just be handed over to city guard?
No, city guard typically in these time periods don't do crap for people who live in the city unless it happens to coincide with protecting the city.
So everybody takes care of their own justice.
You are actually responsible for your own property. If you catch a thief, people around might help you, but you're expected to take care of your own issues. And that's fairly common, not in all the cultures in the world, but around here it definitely is.
So that actually benefits me as a thief quite a bit, because that means that I can get away with a lot more in this area.
You can get away with a lot more unless you steal from this guy who's trying to sell these jewels to the prince. The prince will want these jewels no matter what. So if no one else would probably have the courage to even buy them. You guys are going to steal them. So, that's kind of why you're nervous about Prince Hogar, because he's not considered a people's leader.
I love the peasants. Pull.
Yes. Speaking of Mel Brooks, exactly.
The peasants are revolting. Yes, I know. They are awful.
They stink.
No, they're revolting. They're starting a revolt.
They're actually revolting.
They say that you don't like the peasants. What do you mean? I love the peasants.
Which does remind me that you do look like a bucket of piss.
Thanks, thank you. That's I love it when you get to call attention to that. That's great.
It's a little known fact. That's why we do an audio podcast. It's very awkward.
I would like to run into the follow-up line to that one, which is actually better, but it puts us into explicit if I say it. So I'm gonna skip.
You can go there.
No. I'll save it.
I'll probably put explicit for the piss.
I'll save it. If you're gonna explicit for the piss, then I'll send us right in there.
Okay. Let's see. All right. So this room is one of the two key features we need story-wise.
The tower room?
The top tower room. The tower is important. The house itself really isn't important to the story. You know, I might sketch it out in a map program in case people get curious. Party members often do things that they shouldn't. Michael's a little bit better informed than a normal party member, but even in the act of an actual story, it might be relevant but for the story I'm telling, the house isn't really relevant. I'm not planning to have any detail for the house. So I'm telling this to you guys so Michael can screw me over later.
Well, I would have already screwed you over because it was last episode.
Oh, wait. I don't know. You might have already finished the story. I don't know. Crap, you're way ahead of me.
I'm going to call younger, older Michael later now to
earlier
to find out exactly what happens in the story. That way I can not make the mistakes that he did and that I'm going to.
And then you have to update your time machine. But luckily as an auto
I will have to update the time machine.
Just hope you didn't. And luckily he was smart enough not to make it in Windows.
So what other...
Can you hear that?
Very faintly. Is a cat knocking at the door? When Jeff goes to edit this later, he'll realize that I'm putting an auditory spell on his mind. Jeffrey, you are now under my control. Under my control. You will do what I say. You will talk about how great Michael is in every episode from this one forth.
I just had this weird feeling to say that. I think you're just great. Okay, now back to it. Now, back
Thanks,
to it.
Jeff. That makes up for the piss comment.
So we know a little bit about the city. This is a low-level city. This isn't like a Rome, where they have high structures in old times. This is much more like a medieval-style European city where it's low, it's dirty. Not all of the roads are even paved or cobbled, really not paved. None of them are paved. It smells, it's dirty, which is also very beneficial to you. The problem being... one of the concerns that Michael's character has, and his character knows this, and it might never even be mentioned, but you have to be careful what roads you escape down, because if the road doesn't have pavers, then people might see footprints if it's wet. And since people typically dispose of their waste by just dumping it out their windows and letting the rain wash it into the river, which makes the river not drinkable, it leads to the quandary of, do you use those things to get out or do you not use those things to get out? Because there's a benefit, because you shouldn't use them to get out. If you're smart, you won't, because people can track you. But it's like they know that you know that. So you might use that to try and get out. So one of the reasons why Am is so important, because that's her specialty.
Now, you guys may remember, because I don't know if we mentioned this, that Am was a character that we created in a prior show.
Mm-hmm. What episode was that?
It was ways back.
It was, I think, around like a little bit before 100. I think. Let me Google this. Real quick.
Did we make her before the villain? I thought we made the villain first.
It was right around there, holding out for a hero, I think.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Boo, do not own my microphone, please. Yes, because there's Batman slapping Robin is the picture. Yes, Am. There we go. It is episode 99.
So in episode 99, we created this young woman, and she is a guest star character in this story.
Yeah, and I decided to use her because she fits with the time period. She's in the area. She has a great dislike for the prince, so she would be all in just to screw the prince over.
It doesn't really. Does it really screw the prince over though? Because if he hasn't purchased it yet, it really screws over the merchant, and it only screws.
It screws the merchant over, but it makes the prince look bad because here's someone coming to the town to do business with him, who is robbed.
Fair enough. Yeah, that does make
Which is why you're worried the prince will get heavily involved once you make the robbery because you make him look bad. Money-wise, he's not screwed up over, but reputation-wise, he is tarred.
That makes sense. So, courtyard implies there is some kind of entrance, gate.
Gate. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there definitely has to be a gate because, I do envision this sort of being smuggled in the truck, the classic break into either good guy or bad guy headquarters, right? Is, you somehow get smuggled in on a vehicle. And I really like that. So that's the reason why I think you have to have the courtyard, which is why the courtyard is pinnacle and the tower, especially the top floor of the tower, is pinnacle.
And I hope you guys really enjoyed the casing of the place, and I hope you're really going to enjoy the heist if we got to the heist in the last episode, or if we get into it in one of the next few episodes, because Jeff has actually done a lot of work on this. He's been doing a lot of reading on how to create a heist adventure. So, I would say you've probably put in more work for this one, at least for this individual adventure part of this story, than you did for the last one.
I've put more effort into this one than I put into all of the other stories combined in the last one, unfortunately.
Really?
So, in the last one, I was more concerned about the locations.
Well, the reasoning was different. Yeah.
Yeah. But here I'm more worried about the overall story arc. So I want to look and feel of I've never done a heist story before. So, and I think I'm going to be writing a heist novel this NaNoWriMo, which we'll talk about in a couple episodes. It won't be this story, but I'm using the story to practice building
like a training wheels sort of thing.
Exactly. This is my training wheels.
Nice.
And then I'll be doing a heist story, which is tough because depending on the heist, you might need lots of characters. So it will probably be something like this where you don't need, you don't have like an Ocean's 11 style gang or an Ocean's 12 or 13 size gang, but it will still be more characters than you need for, even most epics are usually 4 or 5, maybe 6 real important characters instead of an ensemble that you typically get in a heist, with a focus on, the number 2 guy and a focus on the mastermind.
So we've got the tower, we've got the all-important room upstairs that's got magical traps, we've got the gate, we've got the courtyard, we've got a small living space that's across the courtyard from the tower. What other features does the walls? Do the walls have anything dangerous on top of them, so somebody couldn't climb over the wall with, say, a grappling hook?
Probably people with weapons.
Oh, there's a catwalk for guys to be up on the top of the wall.
Yeah, the walls themselves will have a battlement around them, and there will be men at arms.
Okay.
So one of the things is you're trying to get the people off of that wall, which gives the ability to get on the wall and then utilize the wall, because beyond that, it doesn't appear that there's anything dangerous about the wall. I don't think there might be ward magic on there as well. So if you come up the outside, it might set off a magical alarm. You don't know that, at least not yet. So,
and there's it's like 3 stories up.
The wall itself is like about 1 story. They're about 12-foot walls.
So
They're a little bit over 1 story.
Very tall.
The tower is about 4 stories tall.
So what I'm saying is like the tower is way higher than the wall. I was thinking the wall was like a story or maybe 2 stories down. It's actually a good 30 feet down.
Yes. We figured 12 feet. Each story in his is probably about 40 feet to the top of the tower. There's battlements on top of the tower. You see archers up there as well too. That is a problem, which is also a reason why you don't want to scale the walls, because if you get caught halfway up a wall scaling with archers, they're going to kill you. There's just no way around that. So you need the archers. They're the reserve threat, and the unknown is, and story-wise, this might change, but there's no magic on the walls, I don't think. I mean, it takes time to put in protection wards, and maybe over time they'll be there, but you're striking really fast. This is probably within, a week or 2 of him arriving to town. So you're trying to strike before he can really build up the defenses where he's at too much. But eyes and people with weapons are pretty effective.
Definitely. Is there anything else that you want to cover before we...
I think the inside of the tower.
Okay.
I kind of know that top floor. I have a feeling it's kind of office-y.
I'm thinking mechanical traps in the stairwells.
Okay, so we need some mechanical traps on the stairwells.
Like whether it be something simple as tripwires or tripwire activated traps.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. How about this, too? Classic castle defense. All of the hallways going up the staircases all have murder holes. Do you know what a murder hole is, right? It sounds
really familiar. Is this where there would be an access for somebody on the inner part of the tower, and they could use a spear to stab somebody that's in the stairwell?
Use a spear, pour boiling oil down through them as well. Spears or boiling oil are typically the ways they're dealt with. The thing is, you typically don't know what's on the other side of them, though, as you're moving through. But I think that would be good for tension.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's like, okay, I'm here. I'm moving. Wait a second. I need to know, is there anyone above us? And
when you say murder holes, like I'm envisioning them being in the walls. Are you talking they're above me? They're
ceiling.
In the ceiling. Okay.
They are in the ceiling. They are above you. So like if they could literally pour boiling oil through the holes, and you can't dodge that. Now there aren't a lot. These aren't as efficient as like in a gateway kind of scenario where in the gateway through a tower, there's probably murder holes there as well too. So if people break through the gate and they come in, they can have boiling oil or spears thrust down on them. But I think that adds an element where, especially for your character who we know is going on the inside, tension moving through beyond the traps. Like I have a trap and there's murder holes. Are they both traps? Maybe.
Good to know. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we get to the world building task of the day?
I'm trying to think here. Is there anything else? So we covered the courtyard. It's not huge, I don't think, but it's big enough for a small wagon, not like a massive Teamster wagon, but like one you might move around a city can easily fit in here with a small team.
So two horses or 4 horses? Could you fit a 4-horse?
A two horse wagon.
Team could fit.
You probably could just fit a 4-horse wagon.
They wouldn't be able to turn around.
It's kind of compact. But it's not super big.
All right, fair enough. All right. So
you'd probably have to back out a wagon.
So what do we want to tell people to think about when they're ready to build some sort of evil villain lair? Obviously, the purposes of our lair is different because this is not super evil.
But it's really, what is the purpose that it's going to play in the story? Is it a set piece where the villain will be planning? What are the elements in there that you need to know? It's like, consider my strategy here is I completely ignore the house because the story does not take us into the house portion of the compound.
Another good thing to think about is how old is the structure. In our case, the structure was built with a different purpose intended, and it's now being occupied by different people. If you've got
and it's now surrounded by homes and stuff.
So if you've got like your local evil villain and he has built this structure, then he would have built it with more specific purpose, and it would suit his needs better than what this building potentially does for its current
that's a huge benefit for you because it's
definitely
there are actually homes you could get from the homes next to this with a ladder or something. They're at the same height as the walls, maybe a little bit lower, but it's a thief's dream because there's not the typical killing ground you'd have around a castle. Which makes your life a lot easier. And that's the good thing of having it urbanly located. And so for story purposes too, that alleviates me having to worry about crossing the killing ground to in or out as part of the escape. Because if they can get out, one quick turn and you're out of the line of sight of anyone with a bow, except for those guys high up. But if you stay close to a wall, you're safe. Yeah. If you're a smart thief, which Marcus is and Gregor, they both are
they're
smart.
both very street smart.
They're going to know how to move through here to not be seen from that tower.
So, your world builder task is to create a home base for a villain. If you haven't built your underground, lava-filled, mountainous lair, or possibly a blimp with an airship with shielding and a vat filled with laser sharks.
And a battering ram? Would it have a battering
absolutely.
ram?
Absolutely. Every blimp needs a battering ram.
Heck yeah.
Now, Saya, when we drop the vat of sharks onto our enemies, how will the sharks be able to attack the enemies since they won't be in water anymore?
They have freaking lasers in their freaking head.
Don't be an idiot. You two, fight to the death. You cut my milk. It's a liquid, sir. Idiot, freeze it, then cut it.
Yeah.
That's from Family Guy.
Okay.
Jeff, what's the real world task of the day?
The real world task of the day is, this is the end of September, which means if you're going to do NaNoWriMo, which I know if you're listening to the show, you want to do. Even you guys who just want to build worlds this year, like, what the heck? I want to write a novel because Jeffrey is. Excellent. Okay, you got 1 month to NaNoWriMo 2017 starts. That's November. So you have until November. Go to nanowrimo.org. There'll be a link in the show notes. Or if you just type in NaNoWriMo, and it's part National Novel Writing Month sort of squished together and with a lot of letters missing. But, just search nanowrimo.org. Go to the show notes, click through, join in, and message me. My user there is Gardul Writer. That is Gardul WRITER. And essentially you can message me right through there, and we can help hold each other accountable. Anyone who I'm going to start putting some stuff out to the Undercroft for people who are in there. We'll be doing actual word count, having people post their word counts just weekly there. Because you're going to do it through the NaNoWriMo website. You could take the words you've written, you literally cut and paste them up there, and that's how you get your official counts. And it's not that hard, people. You just gotta focus and have time planned right.
Yeah, and we've done a bunch of episodes about gearing up for NaNoWriMo, and I'm sure we'll do some more this year. But now is a good time to start talking to your loved ones and asking them to support you during that month. They're going to need to maybe cook a few extra meals for you, maybe take care of some of your chores around the house for you, and then you're obviously going to have to make it up to them come December.
Or maybe you're eating leftovers, You're eating all the leftovers every day because, you can only batch make one thing of food for yourself for the week. And then you're eating lasagna for the rest of the week, right? Make yourself a lasagna, eat it for the rest of the week. Yeah. But come up with a battle plan.
And while you're on the Webernets, hop on to www.gardul.com/Amazon for all your Amazon needs. That helps out the show to continue to bring you quality content such as this. So go buy whatever you need. And I guess
with this episode,
NaNoWriMo.
With this episode, we are heavily encouraging you to go buy the Mel Brooks collection. Watch all of it, especially History of the World Part 1 and To Be or Not to Be, which we're mentioning
Blazing
today.
Saddles. Definitely get Young Frankenstein.
Well, there's a collection now. You can get all of them, and they're all worth owning. Some of them aren't great. I don't think the Dracula one actually made it into the collection. But
I don't think I've ever seen the Dracula one.
He came out with one. Leslie Nielsen played Dracula.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was thinking, but I know that one. It was Dead and Loving It, I think.
Mm-hmm. But the major ones, To Be or Not to Be, we actually talked about. We talked about History of the World Part 1, which is a must. Blazing Saddles. If you've not seen Blazing Saddles, you have to see Blazing Saddles in your life.
I mean, Spaceballs is kind of a must, but I feel like most people have probably
That's more if you're a Star Wars fan.
It's so good.
But if you're a Star Wars fan, it's good. It's not nearly as good as like a Blazing Saddles or Young Frankenstein. I personally don't.
Yeah, I would give you that.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here.
Oh, should I have been recording?
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil. We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends, and so would they. If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting by showing them Stitcher or iTunes, or, best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.